So this isn't going to be a normal game recap because I think there was 3 things that decided this game for the Portland Trail Blazers, and obviously decided it for the worse. And that was the way they guarded screens, turnovers, and poor shooting. Now, I'll get the poor shooting out of the way because that'll happen. Sometimes you'll miss shots, especially with that 7-game series coming right before this Warriors series and being on that road the whole time. They probably came in a little flat, not quite as focused, and that's probably part of the reason they miss shots. It happens, and it's kind of something you can't really control. You just gotta hope that you knock down good shots, or you gotta decide to try and attack the rim more, and I think the Blazers did try and attack the rim pretty well in this game. They got to the free throw line a bunch because of how aggressive they were, and it's what kept them in the game, but they did miss shots. But the other 2 things are definitely fixable. And the first thing I gotta get to is the way we guarded the Warriors off screens. Now, national media has been talking about this a lot. This has been a hot talking point. And I warned you guys earlier in the season that, in my opinion, Terry Stotts is a little bit too rigid with his defense. He loves running that drop scheme where he drops the big man way off the screening action, and that's what he did in Game 1. During the season, I said I wish that he would change up his pick and roll and screen coverages to best fit the situation. Against some teams, dropping the big man is what you should do. Against the Houston Rockets, that's a great plan because they run a lot of stagnant pick and roll and they don't like mid-range shots. It's not like Steph, where Steph will fly off screens, and if you're dropping that big, Steph is able to get to the 3-point line. It's a lot of pick and roll, where if you chase the guy over, he's not going to have space. But all season long, and seasons prior to this, I've always wanted Stotts to run multiple different pick and roll schemes because I thought it would give us more regular season success. As I said, there's different schemes that take away the opponent's strengths and maximize their weaknesses. Switching up schemes in the middle of a game would keep teams off balance, which is something that I think we should do in this series. They wouldn't know what to expect when running off a screen or dribbling off a screen. And running a bunch of different schemes in the regular season will be great practice for the Blazers to be able to run different schemes in the postseason and actually be used to them. One of the arguments that I heard for them guarding the screens that way was that that's how they've always done it, and they'd struggle doing something else because they're not used to it. But that's the problem. You can get away with the regular season where you only run one scheme, but when the playoffs come along, you have to be able to run different schemes, and if you're not used to it from running it in the regular season, then you're probably not going to be ready to run it in the postseason. The help side rotation will probably make mistakes. Either way, that's an issue with the way the team is coached. And it was just funny to hear the broadcasters during that game question our coverage on screens all game long. And this has been something that I've been talking about for a while now. Now all of a sudden, people across the nation realize it because the Blazers are on the big stage. They're in the Western Conference Finals. So now people are seeing this, and they're rightly questioning it. All these experts, these analysts, the broadcasters, everybody was questioning the way we were guarding those screens. And it was 100% justified. The Blazers are going to have to fix that. We saw Nikola Jokic in round 2 get up and trap on screens. Get up and hedge on screens. So Enes Kanter can do that. He's not that slow. He's not slower than Nikola Jokic, but if you need to have a quicker big out there, then start Zach Collins. Play Zach Collins more. Hope he doesn't get in foul trouble. Or go small. They don't really have any legit bigs. Play Aminu at center, Maurice Harkless at power forward, Rodney Hood at small forward. Get Rodney Hood more minutes because he's been our 3rd best player from round 2 on. But Terry Stotts should have known that you can't guard Steph and Clay coming off of screens like they did in Game 1. He shouldn't have needed a whole game. Thrown away basically because of how we guarded screens. He shouldn't have needed a Game 1 to realize that that's not how screens should be guarded against those guys. I think if we came in with the right defensive game plan, we could have possibly won that game, and that's why it's so frustrating. It'd be one thing if the Warriors won because they were more talented. It'd be one thing if they won because Steph hit ridiculously tough shots that were guarded as well as you could guard them. But we beat ourselves in Game 1. We beat ourselves. And that's what's so frustrating about it. I don't think this team is that much more talented than us. Without KD, I think we should be able to compete with them every single night. But not if we're going to guard screens like that. Now, Terry Stotts had this response in a post-game press conference that boggled my mind.
Houston had some success, trapping Steph and really getting out on him. Is this sustainable for you guys to keep dropping the big so far?
Did they? I can't remember. When he had 33 in the second half, were they trapping then?
Yes.
They were? And he scored 33 in the second half?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look at that.
Now, he doesn't mention that Steph Curry kind of struggled that entire series. He had 0 points in the first half of that game, and then in the second half, he hit some very tough shots, much tougher shots than he was getting against us. But it was such a defensive response that Stotts always tends to have when people ask him about what he did scheme-wise, and I really don't like that response. It was a completely justified question, and his coverage obviously got burnt. Why is he being defensive about it? I don't understand that. I really didn't like that response. A lot of Blazer fans were hyping up that response, but I just don't think it was a good look for Stotts. But anyway, in Game 2, trap Steph Curry. At least hedge. At least get the big up and run him off the three-point line. Make him into a driver, and then help on the backside off of Draymond and Iguodala, and make Steph kick to those guys. And if those guys beat us by hitting threes, it's a lot better than Steph and Clay, because, believe it or not, combined on the season, Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala were worse shooters than Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless. Other defenses make Mo and Chief beat them and try and completely lock up Dame and CJ. Why wouldn't we do it against the Golden State Warriors? Because their forwards are just as poor of shooters. Now, I know they can drive all right and pass the ball, but it's a strategy we see against us all the time. I don't know why we don't employ it for ourselves. But I also say trap Curry. Try and get turnovers and then run in transition, because the Portland offense was really struggling to get good buckets in the half court. So if you can create some turnovers by trapping Steph, not only do you take away that three-point shot that he was getting and knocking down all Game 1, but you might also get some easy transition buckets, flip defense into offense, and build some momentum. And I thought it was funny how you had players in the post-game press conference talking about they need to get players up on screens more. They need to get the bigs up on screens more. They know what should be happening. They basically knew during the game, and Stotts didn't really adjust. And some people said, oh, he probably wanted Cantor up on the screens. Cantor just wasn't getting up there. Well, if Cantor completely botches the pick and roll defense or the screen defense, if he botches it that much, he should be taken out of the game. He wasn't taken out of the game. If he doesn't have the speed to do it, then he should be taken out of the game. So that's not an excuse for Terry Stotts, because he needs to play the personnel to run the best offensive scheme. And if players are messing up the scheme, he needs to sub somebody else in for them. Another thing I didn't really understand was having CJ on Klay Thompson, but Dame and CJ apparently wanted to guard Steph and Klay. But as a coach, at some point you just have to say, no. You're not the best matchup for Klay Thompson. Maurice Harkless would be. CJ could easily guard Andre Iguodala, and you could have some length on Klay Thompson to bother his shot so that he couldn't post up CJ McCollum, so that he'd maybe second guess himself running off his screens, that type of thing. But because CJ wanted to guard Klay, Terry Stotts was like, okay, sure. Really? You gotta switch that up, because that's not going to work. But that should have been obvious before Game 1. And then the last thing is the turnovers, and Dame was the biggest offender in terms of committing turnovers, but when you look at the way he was guarded extremely well. And he's trying to create offense on his own in one-on-one situations or off a pick and roll against 2 or 3 bodies. With forwards in Aminu and Harkless who aren't good shooters, but then again, the Warriors offense has more than enough space with Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green, but Chief and Mo weren't really spacing the floor right. They weren't really cutting at the right times. It was just a completely bogged down and packed offense. So Dame was trying to create something out of nothing constantly, and he was driving downhill about as hard as I've ever seen him. Maybe that's a product of the big stage. He's playing a little bit too hard, as if he's Russell Westbrook type of thing. But he kept jump passing and trying to throw across his body once he was too deep, and that was the main turnover he was committing. I'm not even going to say, oh, Dame's not stepping it up, because you look at the way he's being guarded, and you put any star in that situation, you'll probably have the exact same results as you have with Dame. People talk about how he struggles in playoffs, but they continuously ignore the way he's guarded. And I hear the argument sometimes, oh, well, if he's a superstar, if he's an all-star, he needs to figure it out. But the dude's not superhuman. The dude's not the greatest basketball player alive. He's not Giannis or LeBron, who's big enough and physical enough to be able to bully his way through 3 guys. I guarantee you, if we guarded Steph Curry in Game 1 the way Damian Lillard was guarded, Steph Curry wouldn't have done anything. So yeah, Blazers need to clean up the turnovers, but they need to find a way to try and create better offense and create better opportunities for Dame, because those opportunities weren't good and he struggled because of it. So anyway, that's the problems I saw in game 1. That's things that they need to fix going into game 2. If they're able to fix those things, they got a very good chance to win this game. And if you go home in game 3 with a 1-1 series split, and it doesn't sound like Kevin Durant's going to return until possibly very late in the series, then Portland will be in good shape. So anyway, that's all I got for now, True Blazer fans. I hope you enjoyed this game 1 recap. This has been Tori. I'll see you later. Peace out. Go Blazers.